With the breaking development that singer David has now been arrested in connection with the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez and the release of his attorney's new statement, we have a ton of legal questions we need to answer. Why wasn't he charged yet? He's only been arrested. Why is there a dispute over cause of death? Is there a weakness in this case? What was the evidence LAPD had to make this arrest? So many questions. I'm going to be breaking it down with renowned celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, real quick before we jump into all of this, we have this app, this partner that I think you're going to love. It's called Upside. Upside gets you cash back, extra cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, takeout. So here's what you do. You download Upside for free. You claim an offer at one of their 100,000 plus locations. You pay like normal with your card. You verify the purchase, and just like that, money back. So say I need to get gas or I want takeout one night, I'll search for Upside offers first, and after I spend, money appears in my app that I can transfer right into my bank account. And Upside's frequent users earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting your cash back, click the link in the description or scan the QR code, but make sure to use promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. After 7 months, 21-year-old David Anthony Burke, David, the singer, has been arrested for the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And look, while my colleague, Chris Stewart, on the case, broke down the breaking news of David's arrest last night, I was on News Nation, I was hosting my show, I couldn't get to it, I apologize. There is a lot more that we need to break down today. There is a lot more that has come out since that arrest. And there's a lot of legal questions we need to make sense of. I mean, I'm made of legal questions right now. Why wasn't he indicted? Why was he just arrested? Meaning he was arrested for suspicion of murder, but he hasn't been charged. Wasn't there a grand jury hearing evidence? Did the LA District Attorney's Office know the LAPD was going to make an arrest? What happens now in terms of charging? Is this a sign the case may not be strong? Are there cooperating witnesses? His attorney's statement is very interesting, particularly when they talk about cause of death. But let me just start with this, okay? So this is from the LAPD, their PIO. Quote, detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division have arrested David Burke, a 21-year-old resident of Los Angeles, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Burke is being held without bail. The case will be presented to the district attorney's office on Monday for filing consideration. Now, this came in from the LA County District Attorney's Office. Good evening. Our office is aware of the arrest of David Anthony Burke by the Los Angeles Police Department. The case is expected to be presented to the Major Crimes Division, at which point prosecutors will review the facts and evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to file charges. At this time, additional information is not available. We will share an update on Monday once a filing decision has been made. And then this came in late last night. Good evening. The individual mentioned is still in LAPD custody. You may reach out to the district attorney's office once the case has been presented to them. So to be clear, David has been arrested, but he hasn't been officially charged with a crime. And by the way, talk about his arrest. What a scene it was. According to NBC News, David was arrested shortly after 4:30 p.m. at a house in the Hollywood Hills located on Marmont Avenue. I mean, we hadn't heard publicly from David in months. We hadn't seen David publicly in months. He was on his Withered tour when Celeste's body was found, and that tour was canceled. Future dates were canceled. And then he went radio silent. LAPD Captain Scott Williams told the outlet, quote, "We did the best we can to keep tabs on him, but once we developed probable cause to arrest him for murder, then we were on him pretty diligently." And he told the California Post they had a probable cause warrant with them when they made the arrest. And there are photos of armed police outside this residence making the arrest. Per reporting from the California Post, David appears to be in handcuffs. He's led away. A neighbor apparently told the outlet that she saw, quote, so many cops on this street that one of them took to a loudspeaker shouting, "Surrender." This brings me now to David's attorney's statement. So this is from Blair Burke, Marilyn Bednarski, and Regina Peter. Let us be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. There has been no indictment returned by any grand jury in this case, and no criminal complaint filed. David has only been detained under suspicion. We will vigorously defend David's innocence. So that's right, he's innocent until proven guilty. And by the way, that was their first public statement on this case after so many months. And to put this into context, I said 7 months. Remember when I said 7 months? It was back on September 8th when her decomposed body was found in the trunk of a Tesla, reportedly belonging to the romantic homicide singer. And while not officially confirmed by investigators, there has long been speculation and reports that Celeste and David were romantically involved. But remember, there have been no arrests, there have been no charges up until yesterday. That was the first real arrest in connection with the alleged murder of Celeste. Now, Celeste was reported missing from Lake Elsinore back in 2024. This is about 75 miles away from LA. We believe the last reported photo of her was from early 2025. We learned through court filings that Celeste had been dismembered, that her body parts were put in bags. But to be clear, no official cause of death has been revealed. Why? Because the ME's records, the medical examiner's records, were sealed. They were sealed by a court based on a request from the LAPD, which has only added to the speculation, the confusion, the frustration in this case. And those same filings indicated that David was a target in this murder investigation, which is interesting because at one point, police indicated there may not even be a crime outside concealment of Celeste's body. So something changed. We heard reporting, particularly from TMZ, that a grand jury had been impaneled out in LA on this case. There was back and forth about whether it was a grand jury that could return an indictment or merely it was an investigative grand jury that hears evidence, locks in testimony. And based on what just happened, David being arrested but not charged, isn't that telling? And remember, his purported friend, Neil Langston, was arrested for allegedly failing to appear as a witness, reportedly brought back to LA to testify in a criminal proceeding. We presume it was this grand jury. So as you can see, there are a lot of legal questions about the case, the evidence, the defenses, whether he's actually going to be charged, how he's going to be charged, and that's what I want to talk about. So I want to bring in Bradford Cohen, celebrity criminal defense attorney, friend of the show, friend of mine. So good to see you. I'm very, very confused. Look, I'm confused because he was arrested and not charged. He was arrested, what I think was via a complaint, right? They got him through a probable cause warrant. I thought there was a grand jury that was being impaneled to present an indictment. So the way I understand it is now he's arrested. They're sending it back to the DA's office for filing consideration. And they already have the case? Weren't they already presenting evidence to the grand jury? I'm confused what's going on here.
So I'm confused as well because I thought they were presenting evidence to a grand jury this whole time. I thought that's what was taking so long because they were determining how the cause of death happened, what the evidence was. And it was unusual because it's a Tesla. And usually Tesla has audio and video attached to their car. So you would be able to see who was putting what in where or when it happened and when it was parked. The whole thing was very unusual the way it developed and then how long it took. And then to culminate in an arrest with a complaint seems unbelievably weird because now it's going back to the DA's office who already knows all about this case for filing consideration. So I think that there's something strange going on. It could be, and I'm just spitballing, is a CYA type situation where it could be that the LAPD has a different point of view than the state attorney's office. And now they made the arrest. Now they're putting the onus on the state attorney's office to now say, listen, there's not enough evidence there. So sometimes this happens where the police feel, listen, there's enough. We're making an arrest. The state attorney's office says, don't make an arrest. There's not enough. And the policing agency just makes the arrest and says, good, now you guys can go to the press and tell them there's not enough evidence here to charge this guy where it's his Tesla, it's, 3 blocks from his house, it's his ex-girlfriend, she's 15 years old, and she's found dismembered. Now you go to the press and say there's not enough evidence to charge.
You heard the statements, right? You heard the statements last night. Did it seem to you that the DA's office wasn't aware that the LAPD was going to arrest him? Because they're like, it kind of felt like we were made aware of this. We're aware of what happened. It didn't seem like it was a joint operation that they were. I mean, I could be speculating, but that's what it seemed like to me.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head. That's why I'm saying, like, the only thing I can in this situation is that there is not a meeting of the mind in terms of that they have enough evidence to charge this young man. And if they don't have enough evidence, or the state feels they don't, but the LAPD feels they do, like I said, the LAPD never wants to look stupid, and they do look stupid where it feels like there's a lot of evidence here that points to this gentleman, and they're not making an arrest, and it's been 6 months, it's been 8 months. So that's why now they can say, listen, good, here's the state attorney. You
Right.
say that there's not
Well,
evidence.
let me ask you this. Tell me if any of these scenarios could be true. One,
Of course.
the grand jury's still hearing evidence and the LAPD just decided to arrest him while the grand jury's still hearing evidence. B, grand jury came back and said no to an indictment, which would be kind of a rare thing because of the standard to get a grand jury indictment that there's probable cause was very low. So it's maybe the grand jury said no, or maybe this was just a grand jury that was impaneled like an investigative grand jury, hear evidence, lock in testimony, and then move forward from there. Any of those possibilities realistic?
I think the third one's less likely, but it could be. But generally speaking, the first two are probably more likely scenario where the grand jury could be still hearing evidence, but the LAPD felt they weren't moving fast enough, so they made an arrest. There could be that they felt that he was going to flee. It could be that they had information he was leaving the country and they wanted to
That
lock him
didn't
down
seem
because
even if you hear the commander, like it seems like they had eyes on him based on the
yeah,
reporting that they knew where he was in the Hollywood Hills.
I would imagine that they knew where every movement that he made was. So generally, I'll tell you how this generally goes. Generally, this goes where if the state or the feds aren't ready to indict, but they feel there's a flight risk, they may make the arrest and then, figure it out. Let's see how it all goes. That's kind of generally how this works when you see this scenario. This is a little bit different because the kid was out of the country, in the country. They've been keeping eyes on him. He knows an investigation is going on. Any minute this kid could have taken off, but he didn't. And I think the LAPD were keeping tabs on him. So that is the least likely situation that I see, but it could have been that. I think more than likely it was that the LAPD feels they have enough evidence and the state does not feel they have enough evidence and they were tired of waiting and they just made the arrest.
Okay. What's that disconnect? Why might there be a problem in this case? I'll give you an example. It was reported that Neil Langston, David's purported friend, testified for only 30 to 40 minutes. And this was believed that he was somebody who was important to this case, that allegedly was there, that maybe had a role in this. And allegedly he was arrested for failing to appear. He was arrested in Montana, brought back. So you look at something like that, you're like, well, maybe he didn't give them what they needed. Maybe he pled the fifth. You think about David's defense attorneys who's saying he's not the cause of death. Is there something seriously lacking in this case from an evidentiary point of view?
Oh, I've said this from the jump. Like everything points to a certain person or certain persons. The problem that you have is that, and I said this originally, is it a murder case because they cannot determine the cause of death? Let's say this young lady died from an OD or died from something else, and we don't know at this point how she died. And then after she died, obviously somebody or someone freaks out. They don't know what to do. There's a dead body in the house, puts it in the trunk, tries to forget about it, things of that nature. That's not a murder case, right? That is a illegal disposing of a body. There's other charges that could be, filed on that. Originally, I thought that's where they were going with this, that it wasn't going to be a murder charge because they could not prove the cause of death. I've read some places online that they say, no, now we can prove the cause of death. I don't know how. It's been like 6 or 8 months and they were trying to figure out what the cause of death was. So I think that is a very large hole in a case where you're charging a murder if you cannot figure out how the person died. So if you have no evidence on how the person died, but you have evidence maybe that the body was disposed of in an illegal way, you have a different charge, but you don't have a murder charge. So I think that's the big hole in this case is no one knows how she died, when she died, because they're trying to determine it, but it's very difficult. And Dr. Bodden did some reports on how bodies decompose and trying to figure out, when someone died. What lends itself to the confusion is it was in the trunk of a car, the front trunk of the car. there it's 90 degrees out, 85 degrees out. We don't know what the temperatures were, if the humidity got in there. There's a lot of things that
And
take place
dismembered. And
yeah, and
dismembered.
dismember.
To go back to this for a second, what is happening Monday now? So they present it to the DA's office. Does the DA, within a few hours, say, we think there's enough? And then they present it in front of a judge for a preliminary hearing where it's not in front of a grand jury, and it's a different kind of way to present evidence to say there's probable cause. The judge determines if there's probable cause to support the charges, and that's how you move forward. Or do they go back to a grand jury? I mean, what are we expecting now Monday into next week?
So I think that at this point, their hands may be tied and they might have to go for a preliminary hearing in front of a judge, a probable cause hearing in front of a judge, if they're going to make that determination. I think between then and now, the defense attorneys will be calling. I'm sure they've already been in contact with the state attorney's office, and they're going to say, like, what are we doing here? This kid should be out. Like, I don't know what the grand jury's doing, but like, how are we proceeding with the case? And I think the state will give them an idea of how they're going to proceed. If a grand jury was already impaneled and they're hearing the evidence and now this guy's arrested, they could still try. And I mean, there's different laws here. There could be speedy rules that come into play. That's why generally you don't make an arrest before you're ready to, right? Because if the demand's speedy, a speedy trial, and you have to be brought to trial within a certain period of time in every state, you could be in real trouble if you're not ready to go to trial. And they might not be ready to go to trial because they still haven't gotten all the evidence that they want to proceed. So my guess is their hands are tied right now. They're going to have to make a decision of how to move forward. I'm not sure what they're going to decide. My guess would be a probable cause hearing in front of a judge. And then now they're laying the blame off to the judge to say, well, the judge didn't find probable cause. Like, we presented all the evidence, judge didn't find probable cause. It's not us who didn't want to file the charges. It's now the judge. Everyone in these cases, whenever there's some stuff flying around, right, they try to cover themselves any way they can. So the LAPD is covering themselves by arresting them. The state will now cover themselves by saying, well, we filed all the evidence and we did everything we did, but the judge didn't find it, or the grand jury didn't come back with an indictment. That's how they keep laying the blame off on other people for shoddy investigations.
Are we going to learn her cause of death? Because I wonder, now that there's been an arrest and now that we're talking about the presentation of evidence, possibly more in a public forum, are the records, remember the ME's records were sealed, are they going to be unsealed and we'll learn what authorities believe her cause of death is?
So I think if you're going to go to a probable cause hearing, you're going to have to hear what the cause of death is. There's no way around it. So you can't go to a probable cause hearing and say, Judge, we're still trying to figure out how she died, but we're charging him with the murder. It doesn't work. So unless they know the cause of death and they're ready to present the cause of death in front of either a grand jury or a judge or someone, this case goes nowhere. So yes, I think that if the case does go forward, we will learn the cause of death at either a probable cause determination or after an indictment comes down.
What about the probable cause warrant that was used to secure the arrest? Is there a way that can be made public?
Sure. So the probable cause that for the arrest warrant itself, once they make a I don't think anyone will get it prior. Well, they may, in this day and age, who knows who gets it, but legally, I don't think they will get it prior to a determination of the arrest on whether it was a good arrest. They'll file some motions and things of that nature. And then within, a week, maybe they will make that arrest warrant public. But generally speaking, before they have that probable cause hearing, before there's a determination by the state, that arrest warrant usually doesn't get out into the public until that time period. Now, again, in today's day and age, any clerk under the sun, is trying to make a little side money, might, all of a sudden that might go out. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But sooner or later, we're going to learn the cause of death. It can't be hidden.
What do you make of the fact no other defendants were arrested?
I think it's unusual because something like this usually is not carried off by one person, especially where there's dismemberment. You got to carry a body into a trunk of a car. You got to drive the car somewhere. You got to get back to your house, or however you're going to get back to your house. Generally, there's more than one. So it's kind of unusual that there'd only be one person charged in this, but it could be because the evidence is only linking it to that one person. I don't know if they got video from the Tesla They haven't discussed video from the Tesla, but my guess would be if there is video of this gentleman driving that Tesla to this location, even if there's no video of him actually putting something in the trunk, if there's video of him driving the Tesla to a certain location, leaving it there, and then getting home, walking home, or taking an Uber, or however he got home, then he would be the only one that would be linked to that Tesla. But like I said, there's a large gap in evidence here that we have not seen, we have not heard.
Or there's immunity agreements. There's people who are testifying against him.
There could be immunity agreements. Generally, when it comes to a murder case, if you're assisting in the murder, it's like a Sammy the Bull Gravano situation. It depends how badly they want the person that they target, right? So like the government can overlook a lot of bad deeds, and the state can look over a lot of bad deeds if they really want that guy at the end. And if they want David as badly as we think they want David, yes, they could have offered some sort of immunity, or maybe an early sealed plea on something lesser, like disposal of a body, and someone took a plea, but it's sealed, and we don't know about that plea until after, if David gets charged.
Okay, so what about the idea of where the defense attorneys will go with this? You saw the arrest, right? It seemed they went in, guns, armored. There was reporting the idea that a lot of police showed up, apparently knew where he was. How does a defense attorney pick apart the actual arrest of David and maybe the probable cause warrant there? Talk to me about that.
So a couple things. First of all, I always find it unusual and disturbing when you have a defense attorney, a case been going on for 6 months. This is why I don't think the state agreed with it. The state would have called the defense attorney and said, "Hey, man, you got to bring him in. And you got 2 hours to bring him in. If you don't bring him in, we already know where he is. We're going to pick him up. It's going to be ugly, et cetera, et cetera." Instead of putting SWAT officers at risk, other officers at risk, and going into a house with guns drawn and things of that nature, that's always a risk. No matter who you're arresting, no matter what type of situation, it's not a good idea. It's better to avoid that. So that first part tells me that I think the state didn't know this was going on, because if the state was involved, they would have been involved with the defense attorney. They would have pulled the kid out, and they would have, I think, turned him in that way. That's number one. Number two is, if the defense is like me, I'd be attacking exactly what every, I think, defense attorney sees in this case, is the lack of evidence. Where is the actual evidence of that it was a murder? Where is the actual evidence that ties him to the scene, other than it's his car and it's 3 blocks away from his house? It seemed like there was 5 people or 4 people in the house at all times. And most of these entertainers, I represent a lot of entertainers. Most of these entertainers have like entourages with them. They have, at any given time, there's 4 to 6 people in a house, and they're all hanging out, playing 2K, whatever they're doing. Everybody is in the house at one point. So it's like, where is the evidence that we need to see to say, yes, this is the guy, and it's the only guy, and we're arresting him for this murder? That's what is lacking here. Now, the defense attorneys may know more than we know, because they've been involved in the case and they've been seeing it develop. Who knows? But I would attack it right from jump. This case has been 6 to 8 months old. I don't even know if it's older than that. Kid went nowhere. Kid's never left the country and never came back. He knew that he was under investigation. There was reports of it. So even for a bond hearing, like, where's he going? He's not going anywhere. Like, we know that. And then for a danger to society, like, how often were you watching him for the past 8 months? You're letting this guy, if you think he's a murderer, you're letting him walk the streets of LA without keeping an eye on him 24/7. There's just so much there on this case to defend at this point, because we don't know a lot, that
Right.
I don't see where this case goes to an indictment.
And talking indictment, if the goal was to charge him, if the goal is to arrest him, charge him, like you said, maybe keep him in custody, no other charges, right? There was nothing about the concealment or the dismemberment of the body.
Right.
Nothing also about him having allegedly a relationship with a minor, right? How come none of those charges?
Again, it's so baffling. Like, I don't know if LAPD had the permission or the authority from the state, which they don't need to have. I'm not saying they have to have it, But generally, when they're getting along, they coordinate these things and they say, like, here's the charges that you should hit them with. An alleged, relationship with an underage individual, the dismemberment of a body, the disposal of a body, all these other things that they would have tacked on to give us an idea what's going on, number one. And number two is to make sure he doesn't get out on bond. Here's a litany of other charges, Judge. Like, this guy is a danger. He shouldn't get out on bond. That's what they should have done. My suspicion is, like I said, quite often you find in a lot of these different areas, LA is one of them, you'll find that the chief of police does not have the same view of different crimes with the state attorney of that area. And you find that in a lot of different areas. Orlando was one where, the prosecutor didn't get along with the sheriff. Sheriff was a real, gung-ho guy on crime, and the individual in the office in Orlando wasn't, or Tampa, wasn't as gung-ho. And you see that quite often. Now, how does that get resolved? The sheriff keeps arresting, and the state either dismisses the charges or says, we're not filing, we're not going to file on marijuana charges. And the sheriff says, I don't care, I'm still arresting people. As long as it's illegal, I'm still making the arrest. So let the state dismiss the charges. So you see that quite often in different areas, especially now. You used to never see it. But
Right.
Now, where I think politics play a bigger role in how crimes are charged and who charges them, I think you're seeing that more often, where a sheriff does not get along with a state attorney in that area.
Okay, let's see what happens next week. Hopefully we get more answers come next week.
It's really interesting how this takes place.
It really is. Bradford Cohen, good seeing you, my friend. Thanks for trying to clear it up for us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody. How much did David's family really know about his alleged relationship with 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez before she was found dead and dismembered in the trunk of a Tesla allegedly registered to him? What did they potentially say to a secret grand jury in the months before the now 21-year-old was slapped with murder and mutilation charges? And did his brother really think now is the time to just kick off his own music career? We're talking about David's family right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. David Anthony Burke, known by his moniker, his stage name David, is accused of sexually abusing a teen girl for months before allegedly luring her to a swanky rental home in the Hollywood Hills, killing her with some sort of sharp instrument, letting her bleed out, and then cutting her up in an inflatable pool in the home's garage. Horrific. But this is all according to investigation by the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division and now the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Now we know David has entered a not guilty plea to the charges that he faces, and that his attorneys, led by Blair Burke, say the evidence will show he didn't cause Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death. Exactly what that evidence might be, though, still unclear. But again, as he faces these charges, including first-degree murder and their special circumstances allegations, which could make this life in prison without the possibility of parole, maybe even the death penalty, even though there's a moratorium on executions, the stakes are very severe. And today, as we inch closer to a preliminary hearing in David's murder case, I want to do something else. I want to talk a little bit more about what we know about him, his family, his relationship or alleged relationship with Celeste, and what's next in this very high-profile criminal case. Because you may or may not have heard of David before Celeste's body was found in the trunk of a Tesla towed to a Hollywood tow yard in September. The singer-songwriter shot to fame in 2022 with a song called Romantic Homicide, which has more than, I think, 1 billion plays on Spotify. His latest album, Withered, landed a top 15 spot on the Billboard 200 when it debuted last year. This is according to The Hollywood Reporter, sandwiching David in between hitmakers like Billie Eilish and Chappell Roan. Guy's a big deal. By the way, important for the legal case, his career. And David also made headlines in the music industry because of his production process. According to an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, most of his songs are recorded on his iPhone using apps like BandLab. But his success quickly pulled him from his Texas bedroom to the international stage. Multiple websites list David's net worth as between $2 and $3 million, which, by the way, we weren't able to independently confirm, but it's safe to say that he has been seeing some serious success. You got to imagine that. And in September of 2025, the media pivoted from talking about his withered concert tour, which he soon canceled, and instead focused on his alleged involvement in Celeste's death. She should have been celebrating her 15th birthday, but instead, she was found dead, dismembered, some of her body parts still missing, all in the front trunk of a Tesla, reportedly registered out of Texas to David. She had last been seen or heard from months earlier in April. So now David was the focus of serious scrutiny from law enforcement and online sleuths and traditional media, and that scrutiny spread to his family as well. And it turns out that as David was writing and releasing Romantic Homicide, he was also allegedly interacting online with young fans, including Celeste. According to a brief that was filed by Los Angeles prosecutors in anticipation of a preliminary hearing, quote, pursuant to their investigation, LAPD robbery homicide detectives determined the victim and defendant met in January 2022 when she was 11 years old. They began a sexual relationship in November 2023 when the victim was just 13 years old and defendant was 18. But he wasn't the only one interacting with Celeste. She apparently spent time with his friends, including Neo Langston, who was purportedly one of David's good friends. Investigators say she even traveled to Texas with David to meet his family. The prosecution's brief states, throughout 2024, the victim spent a significant amount of time with defendant, including summer weekends at his home in the Hollywood Hills and traveling with him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas to meet his family. Now, it's unclear how much David's parents and brother knew about his interactions with Celeste and if they were aware of how young she was, but we do know that the family was ordered to come to LA and testify, seemingly in front of a grand jury, as prosecutors were working to build a case against him. After David's arrest in April, an attorney representing the Burke family released a statement to Rolling Stone saying the parents are sad and disappointed that David was arrested. However, they fully stand behind him and believe that he is innocent. They fully support him. Okay, before we jump into this, look, the weather's getting nicer, and it means, it's time for a little spring reset on the closet, right? For me, that is about quality over quantity, going for pieces that are easy for every day, but have an elevated feel, and something that's not going to break the budget, right? That's why I got to tell you about Quince, okay? So Quince makes beautiful, effortless pieces using premium materials like 100% European linen and organic cotton, super soft denim, and they have tons of accessories too, like their hand-woven Italian leather bags. Best part? They have styles that start around just $50 because they work directly with ethically sourced factories, so you get the quality without the markups. Recently, I got to tell you, their linen tops, perfect for the nice weather because the fabric, yes, it feels luxurious, but it's just so easy to throw on and still, look put together running out the door. So give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/longcrime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/longcrime for free shipping and 365-day returns. So I want to talk about what we've learned about the Burke family over the last year or so. And I'm going to preface this by saying that David is the only person to have been charged in connection with Celeste's death right now. His family members have not been accused of any wrongdoing. But David's parents are Colleen and DeWood Burke. He also has an adult brother, Caleb, as well as a younger sister. This is according to TMZ. And we're going to get into more about Caleb and how he's maybe turning heads right now in just a second. But last fall, when all of the speculation started swirling around about David, the Tesla, a body being found in California, what was going on in Texas? Well, the Burke family home was reportedly the target of swatting. So swatting's a dangerous prank where someone calls 911 and pretends that there's been some sort of incident, so it requires an urgent police response. It's a hoax. And in this case, 2 Waller County deputies responded to that home in Hempstead, which is apparently on a large piece of property set back off the road. But according to Realtor.com, the 4,400 square foot home sits on nearly 7 acres of land. And it all started with a phone call to 911 on September 18th, so just days after Celeste's body was found.
Waller County Sheriff's Office is Amber. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, Waller County Sheriff's Office.
Hello, I need help.
Okay, what's going on? Where are you at?
My address is...
Okay, what's going on?
I heard, some, gunshots.
Okay. How close to your residence were they?
They were, right outside my house, and I think someone's dead.
Okay, what's your name?
Say it again.
What's your name? Okay, what's a good phone number for you, sir? Okay, and why do you believe that somebody's dead?
I just heard like a loud scream and there was gunshots.
Oh, scream. Okay. After shots. Okay, but you haven't saw or heard anything else after that?
I heard a scream.
Was it a male or a female scream, do you think?
It was like a female.
Female? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get deputies headed out that way and just confirming you're at...
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get them sent that way, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
So someone's alleging that there's someone dead at this home, doesn't want to provide much detail. We spoke with an audio expert, by the way, for an episode of Sidebar when this first came out, and she said the voice was distorted and it's likely someone trying to mask it. Now, one of the responding deputies called into the sheriff's office to get more information from the dispatcher as he approached this property.
How far is the other guy out?
No, let me see where he's at compared to you.
Show me front of me, Mark.
He is turning right now onto 359, so he's probably like 5-6 minutes if he's booking it. Yeah, this house is far. Be careful. Wait on him, Chris.
That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do.
This guy, whenever he told me, he was like, hey, I just heard gunshots and someone's dead. And I was like, wait, what do you mean somebody's dead? Like, how do you know that? Do you see them? And he's like, no, he's like, I heard a lady scream right after the gunshots. And I was like, okay, so have you seen anybody? Have you heard anything? Have you heard any more gunshots? He's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, what's your name? My name? And I was like, yeah, what's your name? But behind it, to the side of it, grass. So y'all just be careful.
Yeah,
he's almost he's on Porter Lane right now already.
Right,
so he's moving.
Yeah, I'm gonna move up a little ways, then we'll ride in.
Okay, well, we're gonna close it when y'all get there, just to make sure.
All right, let me grab my ride. Yeah, cause this ain't right. I remember one time coming out here when I first started, and we had a crazy dude back here, and it was like when I was on FTO.
Yeah, and I looked at the prior scene because he kind of gave me that vibe. But yeah, it's a very long driveway that loops around to his big old house.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's no like houses close to him. That's why his property is huge.
Yeah.
That's why when he said that, it confused me.
All right, let me let him know.
Okay.
I'm getting about to pull up beside me. I'm gonna let him know.
Okay, bye.
So the deputies, one of whom, by the way, is armed with a high-powered rifle, walked up to the Burke's front door.
Go ahead. I got you covered. Come right here. Too many windows. Here, knock on the door. We got a phone call from here saying that somebody was dead. What? Is there somebody else that lives on this property that has your address? What's your address? No. That's it.
That's it. That's what I actually got.
We got an address. There was a gunshot and a woman scream.
What?
I'm serious. That's why we came up here like this, because and then they talked to the caller. Whoever they were talking to said that there's a person dead.
No, sir.
David's mom, Colleen, apparently fearful that the deputies might not be who they say they are, called 911 to verify what's going on.
Sorry to bother you, but somebody called and said there was something. I mean, there was a person where they called on themselves. You know what I mean? It was like, hey, there's somebody dead.
Someone's dead. Yeah.
That's what we have. I mean, we have to take caution. You know what I mean? Wasn't trying to scare y'all. Just this house is way off the roadway.
So you just opened the gate and came in?
Yes, ma'am. I'll put it back. I have a gate just like it.
I think it's part of my country.
Yeah, when it's something like this, when they say somebody's dead, their life matters more than, you know what I mean?
I hear.
Yeah, the dispatcher read the phone number of the person who called 911 to Colleen, typed it into her phone, and it didn't show up in her contacts.
It ain't on their phone.
And this is not a Texas.
Yeah, that's an out-of-state number.
Someone's messing with us.
But it would be pinged here though, because wherever they call from, it pings and sends it to dispatch.
What?
So like whenever you call 911, wherever you are, it sends like a ping that's how they know the address.
And this address came up to this number?
Yes, ma'am, that's where he was meeting. County to Engine 42.
So it says somebody on my property?
It could be. We'll check the property for you.
So there's this police report that was apparently reviewed by TMZ that says the deputies were on the property for another 20 minutes or so before they closed out the call, determining that it was likely swatting. And TMZ also later reported that David had transferred deeds of 2 Texas homes to a trust in his mother's name. That reportedly happened on September 18th and September 20th. Why? Remember, September 18th was the day of that swatting call. It's not clear why the singer decided to do the transfer, but there was speculation at the time that if he did end up getting arrested in connection with Celeste's death, he didn't want authorities to be able to seize his assets. It's also interesting to note that between September, when he canceled his Wither tour, and April, when he was arrested, we don't know where David was. We didn't know where he was. He went silent on social media, didn't make any public appearances as far as we know. He was arrested in California. Is it possible that he was lying low at one of those Texas homes during these months? We know he was arrested at this property in California. How long was he there? And another interesting connection, we actually learned for the first time that David was a, quote, target of a murder investigation because of court documents that were filed by David's family. What do I mean? In February, what's called a petition of attendance was filed, and essentially was trying to compel Colleen, DeWood, and Caleb to appear before a Los Angeles grand jury. And here's an example of what that paperwork said. Quote, that if DeWood Burke comes into the state of California in obedience to a summons directing him to attend and testify at said grand jury investigation, the laws of the state of California and of any other state through which he may be required to pass by the ordinary course of travel to attend such proceeding shall give him protection from arrest and the service of process, civil or criminal, in connection with matters which arose before his entrance into said state pursuant to such summons. That DeWood Burke is an adult, that the prosecution will provide the witness a round-trip airplane ticket and transportation to and from the airport. Wherefore, it is requested for and on behalf of the state of California that your honor certify to the above and foregoing by the issuance of a certificate thereto under the seal of the Superior Court of Record in the state of California to compel the attendance of DeWood Burke as a witness at the grand jury investigation on the date and time set forth and pursuant to law. So clearly they wanted him, right? And we had a chance to dig into that court paperwork, and attorneys for the Burkes filed a writ of habeas corpus arguing that the order compelling them to go to California was illegal, that it was unlawful, because they didn't get fully unredacted copies of the documents that were accompanying the request, so they didn't have the full information, they didn't have notice. Now, a judge considered those arguments, but ultimately denied the writ. But as part of those proceedings, there were some documents that were unsealed, and it gave us a look at where this investigation stood at that point. Again, this is before David's arrest. In those documents, David was referred to, and this was a big shocker, as a target of a murder investigation. Quote, it is alleged in this case that the target may be involved in the death of 14-year-old victim Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who may have been a victim of foul play. Her severely decomposed, dismembered body was found in the front trunk of Target's Tesla on September 8th, 2025. On September 8th, 2025, at approximately 10:30 hours, Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD detectives, received a phone call from the manager of Hollywood Area Official Police Garage. The manager stated a black Tesla Model X had been impounded as an abandoned vehicle by the Department of Transportation on September 5th, 2025. The manager told police there was a strong smell of decay coming from the vehicle, which was attracting flies. LAPD detectives responded to the Hollywood tow yard to investigate. Detectives approached the vehicle, which was parked on the upper deck of the impound lot, and immediately noticed the smell of decaying biological material consistent with a decomposing corpse coming from the front storage compartment of the vehicle. Detectives obtained a search warrant for the vehicle, and when the front storage compartment was opened, detectives observed a black cadaver bag covered with insects and a strong odor of decay. Utilizing black latex gloves, detectives partially unzipped the bag and observed a decomposed head and torso. Investigators and criminalists from the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner responded to the tow yard to process the decomposed body. Upon removing the cadaver bag from the front storage compartment, it was discovered the arms and legs had been severed from the body. A second black bag was discovered underneath the cadaver bag. Upon opening the second bag, the dismembered body parts were discovered. Detectives were advised that on August 26, 2025, a citizen reported the above-mentioned Tesla as an abandoned vehicle parked across from 1405 Bluebird Street. On August 27, 2025, Department of Transportation officers responded to Bluebird and marked the vehicle. On September 3, 2025, Department of Transportation returned to the vehicle and issued a citation. On September 5, 2025, Department of Transportation impounded the vehicle to Hollywood Area Tow. It was noted that the Tesla was registered to target David Anthony Burke in Hempstead, Texas. David, who is a singer and performing artist, was on tour at the time his vehicle was impounded. And then the next section is different for each witness, but it says detectives learned that Caleb Burke is the younger brother of target David Burke and has a close relationship with him. Detectives learned that Colleen Burke is the mother of target David Burke and has a close relationship with him. Per several witnesses, she is instrumental to his career success and manages his business finances. Detectives learned that DeWood Burke is the father of target David Burke and has a close relationship with him. So you also wonder if they were going to be compelled to testify about maybe the relationship or the alleged relationship with Celeste. And then there's a large chunk of text that's redacted, but from there we have this application for writ of habeas corpus, and the basic argument here, again, is that under Texas law, a court can only force a resident to testify in another state if there's been a meaningful hearing. They need to understand what it's all about before being forced to go somewhere or being confined in some way. And as I mentioned, that writ of habeas corpus was denied by the court. But to get back to the point, 2 hearings were held. And at the first one, on January 23rd, Colleen and Caleb were in attendance, as well as 2 LAPD homicide detectives who could testify if they needed to. Now, we don't know why DeWood wasn't present, but Mia Magnus represented Texas as well as California, basically by proxy. And she argued that the determination about materiality of these witnesses, like their importance, why they're valued, was already made by a California judge. All the Texas judge needed to do was make sure that the paperwork was all in order and to tell the witnesses they needed to go. Now, the judge said, actually, since this was so last minute, he didn't have any of the paperwork. So they decided to reschedule the hearing for several days later. At the February 2nd hearing in Texas, Colleen, Caleb, and DeWood were all there with counsel. Bennett Dodson, assistant DEA for Waller County in Texas, told the court, "I don't think it's a secret to anyone at this point that Mr. David Burke is a musician who's quite famous, and this matter concerns a car that was registered to him at these witnesses' address here in Houston that had a dismembered, decomposing body in it. I would say if a car with a dismembered, decomposing body is registered to your home address, that is something you should expect to be questioned by the authorities about, and that's what this is, Judge." Well, the attorneys for David's family members argued that everyone involved in both California and Texas courts, so the judges, the prosecutors, they had seen the unredacted affidavit, but their clients only got the redacted version. And they want to know what's in that big blacked out section of the petitions. Again, it goes back to the legal argument. Hey, we have a right to know what this is about under habeas before relinquishing our freedom in a way. Now, ADA Dodson claimed that most of that information in the affidavit is already known to the public, saying, quote, "It's all over TMZ," goes on to say the redacted information concerns knowledge that is only known to the grand jury, period. It has not been distributed anywhere. And then the judge's decision. But even when I look at it myself, I still think these witnesses are material and necessary because of the relationship that's involved with the witnesses and the defendant. So my ruling is going to be that they are to go to California and honor the subpoena by California. And while the judge ordered the Burkes to go to LA, appear before seemingly this grand jury, it is unclear when that happened and what they had to say, apparently, in those secret hearings. However, as I mentioned earlier, the family has come out in support of David. They say they believe he's innocent. And I will say this, and this is a new update, and it's a bit of a strange twist to say the least, but as David is languishing behind bars right now as he's awaiting his preliminary hearing in his trial, and again, he's innocent until proven guilty, his brother Caleb is making the news because Caleb has apparently taken this opportunity to launch his own music career. Yeah, so according to a report from TMZ, Caleb has used several stage names, including a version of his name where a V replaces the A, and his more recent monikers are Karakova or just Kova, and earlier this week, Kova released a couple of singles on major streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify, by the way, the platform that helped launch David to superstardom, and the 2 singles are called Sex and Imaginary Love. Now, of course, the decision to release music right now is getting a lot of backlash, with some online calling this move tone deaf, demonic. This is according to the Mirror. But Caleb attempted to silence the critics through a lengthy Instagram story on Thursday, appearing to distance himself from his brother, from David, dispel rumors that he helped his brother somehow cover up the alleged murder. Again, there's been no allegations of that. There's been no definitive proof of that. And Caleb also addressed a video of him circulating online, interacting with Celeste backstage at one of David's concerts. So Caleb's post says the following, quote, "I've been wanting to say something for a while, but I have to be careful about what I say as this is an ongoing legal matter. I don't want to make this horrible situation about me. I want justice for Celeste and her family. I've seen people say that I knew what was going on and was protecting my brother. This is not true at all. I have not lived with my brother for years and was not very close with him. We didn't speak often other than when our family was brought on tour or he was visiting home. I was around Celeste a few times when I was 15. I did not know her well and did not know her age. People have been posting a video showing me backstage with her at one of David's concerts when I was 15, and I've been wanting to address it for a while. People have even gone as far as to say that I was sneaking her backstage, which is not true. She was already at the show, and the video takes place after the show had already ended. In the video, we were sent to grab something from a fan that was in front of the stage, and we were walking back. News companies such as TMZ, Daily Mail, and others have started saying that I am taking advantage of the whole situation to promote my music and that I am just now launching my music career. This is not true at all. I have been releasing and posting music over the last 3 to 4 years and took over a half-year hiatus due to what happened. I changed my name online from Kleb to Kova as I did not want to associate myself with any of this. I have not once mentioned the situation or my identity on the new accounts. TMZ even reported my age incorrectly, saying that I'm 20 when I just turned 18 in November. I had scheduled my first release under the new name before any of this became a headline again, and the song came out 2 days before the arrest. This project, music, videos, and songs, was already in motion long before any news coverage around my brother surfaced. My intent has never been to use this to bring attention to myself or my music. This is the whole reason why I started over from scratch. My decision to continue releasing music is not about using any of this for attention. Music is my life, and after stepping away for months because of everything that's happened, I want to build my own path. Now, it's possible that we'll find out more details about possible family ties and connections between David and the Burks and Celeste at a preliminary hearing later this month, because the preliminary hearing, which is when the court will hear some of the evidence that prosecutors have against David, determine whether or not the case should move forward to trial. Is there enough probable cause to support the charges? And that was originally scheduled, by the way, within just a few days of David's arrest, but the defense said they have terabytes of discovery to sort through. They're not ready yet, so the preliminary hearing is now set for the end of May. So we'll, of course, continue to follow this case closely, bring you any updates as they come out. And of course, if we hear any more connections to David's family, we'll talk about it. But that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, 11 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. See you next time, everybody. There is a new bombshell allegation in the Epstein files that dead bodies are buried on one of the deceased financier's famous properties. We are going through the allegations, the launch of a new investigation, and I'm going to bring on a professional coroner to discuss, is this even possible? Can the alleged bodies be found and properly examined? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Jeffrey Epstein has been called a lot of things, and he has been accused of a lot of things. But killer? Being responsible for the cover-up of violent deaths? That would be a new one. But I gotta say, what are we supposed to make of these new allegations coming out of the Epstein files? Because as you may know, we've been covering as best as we can the existing files that were released from the Department of Justice. And something came out that we got to talk about. Buried in the millions and millions of pages, there is an email that has now stood out for a very dark reason. There is an email from November 2019. It's directed to an Edward Aragon. According to KOB4, he's a local radio host. The other names are redacted in this email, but this is what it says. Quote, Edward, this is sensitive, so it'll be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all as a former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G? Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. And there even appear to be links to purported sex videos, including one that says sex video with minor. And then it goes on to say, please arrange for 1 Bitcoin BTC by 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, Thursday, 11/22/19, to the BTC wallet address, that's redacted. The USB will be sent anonymously to your attention by overnight courier upon receipt of the funds. You have my assurance this is exclusive, never shared before, no attorneys, no samples, no questions, please confirm ASAP. So Zorro, by the way, is referring to Zorro Ranch. It's about 30 miles south of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We've talked about this Epstein property before. We had found evidence that upon Epstein's death, he wanted this property, along with all of his major properties, to go to Corinna Shuliak, his purported secret girlfriend. This is in trust documents and will documents. Now, Epstein, based on the reporting here, apparently purchased the 7,500-acre property from former New Mexico Governor Bruce King in 1993. And there were several civil lawsuits that accused Epstein of sexually assaulting girls at this property. It was dubbed the Playboy Ranch, where Epstein, in fact, is accused of sexually abusing a 16-year-old girl as early as 1996. And for example, you have this unsealed 2016 court deposition where the Epstein accuser, renowned Epstein accuser, Virginia Giuffre, testified that Ghislaine Maxwell ordered her to give the late former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson a massage at the ranch. Now, this radio host, Aragon, said that he got this message anonymously. He sent the email to the FBI, which is why, by the way, it was in the Epstein files to begin with, why it was released from the DOJ. And he indicated that he didn't pay this person, which when you think about 1 Bitcoin back in the day was reportedly worth about $8,000 at the time. And he indicated that while he spoke to an FBI agent, he never heard anything more from it, didn't know the status of the investigation. Now, let me be clear about something, okay? We couldn't find more corroborating evidence to support this claim that, there are dead bodies somewhere in the area of this ranch or on the ranch. We don't know if these allegations are true. But if they are true, when would this have happened? We don't know that either. But apparently, I will tell you, this ranch, this claim, is being taken seriously. And in a little bit, I'm going to be bringing on a professional coroner to determine what can we expect here? What potential evidence could be left behind? How can you even find a body? What will be left to actually examine? How much can we tell here? But the reason that we're even bringing a coroner on and talking about this is because this claim is getting serious attention. You have New Mexico's Land Commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, who sent a letter to the New Mexico Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office requesting a full investigation. According to KOB4, Epstein had apparently leased land around this ranch from the state land office, did it through a company called Cypress Inc., but Garcia Richard ended that lease in light of what happened with Epstein. And in a further escalation, the Chief Deputy Attorney General, James Grayson, said the Department of Justice is taking these allegations seriously, only has so much information right now to go forward with because they're working to try to get the original documents to try to verify these accusations. Grayson saying, quote, as we understand it, the allegations appear to be unsubstantiated and stem from an anonymous individual referencing events that purportedly occurred more than 6 years ago. We will work to obtain the original unredacted emails and any underlying files, as access to complete and authentic materials is critical to our assessment and planning. These circumstances raise significant concerns regarding the reliability, authenticity, and credibility of the claims. Notwithstanding those concerns, we are prepared to review and assess any verifiable information should it be provided through appropriate and lawful means. Stephanie Garcia Richard saying, quote, it is our responsibility to manage this land, and if it was being used for nefarious purposes, if it was being used for criminal purposes, we need to know. All right, before we move on, I gotta give a quick shout out to our partner, CyberGhost VPN. Look, have you ever hesitated to connect to public Wi-Fi like in a restaurant, airport, work, school, because you're afraid someone might steal your information? It's totally reasonable. The truth is, eyes are watching you every time you go online, but that's why we got CyberGhost VPN. You can select one of their hundreds of locations before you browse, and they will encrypt everything through their secure servers. This way, no one can track your online activity. It works on up to 7 devices at once, so you can share with family and friends. And with just a couple clicks, CyberGhost CyberGhost unlocks exclusive geo-restricted content from over 40 major streamers like Netflix and Prime. With over 38 million users worldwide and a nearly perfect rating on Trustpilot, CyberGhost is one of the most recommended VPNs out there. And look, if you're still not sure, there's a 45-day money-back guarantee, an 84% discount, plus 4 months free with the link in my description. That is just $2.03 a month to protect your privacy and enjoy unlimited content. So don't wait. Click the link in the description. Start browsing safely with CyberGhost VPN. Stay private, stay secure, unlock global content. Get CyberGhost VPN now with 84% off plus 4 months free, risk-free with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description and start protecting your digital life today. Now, in some latest reporting, the New Mexico Department of Justice apparently sent a letter to the feds seeking the unredacted copies of this email, and you had the New Mexico Department of Justice Chief of Staff Lauren Rodriguez telling Source New Mexico in a statement, quote, "While we have not yet received a response to our letter sent last Friday, we are reviewing all appropriate avenues to investigate the allegations raised, as well as any additional ones that may emerge. We also continue to engage with the Truth Commission leadership to ensure coordinated communication and meaningful participation in the ongoing fact-finding mission." I'm going to talk about the Truth Commission in a minute. Now, back to Garcia Richard. She said in an interview, while the state land office sent hundreds of pages of Zorro Ranch leasing records to the New Mexico Attorney General in 2019, Garcia Richard said, "I have a lot of frustration that we are now 7 years beyond the initial cancellation of the leases, and to my knowledge, not one member of law enforcement has investigated the ranch or state land." And in her letter to the DOJ, she added, "We are fully committed to assisting with an investigation in any way possible, including providing access to state lands adjacent to the former Zorro Ranch." So assuming, these bodies are really buried, where exactly are they buried? You even had U.S. Representative Melanie Stansberry, who issued a video recorded statement.
"I spent a fair amount of my time this morning looking at the files on Zorro Ranch. There's some dark stuff there. And I think it's really important that our colleagues, State House Representatives Mariana Anaya and Andrea Romero, are conducting this Truth Commission because the FBI never did a full forensic investigation of the ranch property. And it's clear that crimes were committed there. And people knew about it. There were victims who went to the FBI, who went to law enforcement, and those crimes were never followed up on. And the ranch was sold from the estate before a full investigation could be done. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, what went down there, why it was not fully investigated, why people were not held accountable. And frankly, as a New Mexican, to anyone who was hurt there, my heart goes out to you.
Guess what happened yesterday? New Mexico lawmakers on Monday, they passed legislation to launch a full-scale investigation here. You have a committee of both Republicans and Democrats who are going to have subpoena power. They're going to try to get testimony from survivors of the alleged abuse that happened at this ranch and local residents to testify, all at the state capitol. So the person who maybe sent that 2019 email, will they come forward? I don't know. But according to Reuters, this probe is going to cost about $2.5 million, reportedly funded through a settlement between the AG's office and financial services companies for failing to address the alleged abuses at this property. And the idea is here, they want to transform the law. They want to amend the law that may have allowed Jeffrey Epstein to allegedly operate the way he's accused of operating at this property. And the preliminary findings are due in July. There's a full final report that's going to be due by year's end. And you have to wonder, is it going to include allegations about dead bodies? Representative Andrea Romero, she said that they're going to use subpoenas and public records and testimonies, quote, to put the whole story together. And in a statement following the vote to launch all this, Romero said that, quote, New Mexicans deserve to know the truth about what went on at the Zorro Ranch and who knew about it. We have heard years of allegations and rumors about Epstein's activities in New Mexico, but unfortunately, federal investigators have failed to put together an official record. With this Truth Commission, we can finally fill in the gaps by investigating the failures that led to the horrific allegations of abuse and crime at Zorro Ranch, so we can learn from them and prevent such atrocities from taking place in our state going forward. This is a complication, maybe a complication, gotta mention it. So while the 1,200 acres that were previously leased by Epstein's company is still public and unleased, this is according to Garcia Richard, guess who owns the actual ranch today? The family of Texas businessman and politician Donald Huffines. It was bought in 2023 by an LLC. This LLC was apparently created just 1 month before. And Huffines is actually running for statewide comptroller's office. And according to the New Mexican, the Zorro Ranch was renamed the San Rafael Ranch, located at San Rafael Road. By the way, what was the purchase price? Reportedly, it was listed in 2021 for over $27 million, but the sales price may have dropped to $18 million. We don't know what it was actually bought for. Although I will tell you, there's a side note. The LLC made the argument, given the ties to Epstein, along with a lower sales price, that's why it was actually valued at only $13.4 million in 2023 for tax purposes. Interesting side note. By the way, public business filings apparently indicated that at one point, Huffines' son, Colin, was the manager of the LLC. Then you had Alan Blakemore, spokesperson for the family, who released a statement saying, 4 years after Mr. Epstein's death, the Huffines family purchased property in New Mexico listed at public auction whose proceeds benefited his victims. Prior to the auction listing, they had never visited the property. Now, I will tell you this. The Huffines family did indicate that they would fully cooperate with this New Mexico investigation if authorities wanted to search the property. That's big. And it is being reported that the feds haven't even searched this ranch as of December 2019. So one of the things that's come out is you had the former AG, Hector Balderas, wrote a letter to then U.S. Attorney John Anderson in October of 2019 about a joint investigation. Quote, my office has been actively investigating and assisting other state and federal agencies with their investigations related to criminality perpetrated in New Mexico by Jeffrey Epstein. And Balderas wrote and requested that the United States Attorney's Office, quote, explore initiating the process to seize Epstein's New Mexico land holdings. But now all these years later, it's coming up again. And by the way, Zorro Ranch, it came up quite a bit in the Epstein files. Several photographs released in the Epstein files show women or girls, their faces apparently redacted at Zorro Ranch. I'll give you an example. In the files, there's a 2015 itinerary, or that's what it appears to be, presumably for Epstein, and it says Saturday, August 1st, 2015, Zorro. Sunday, August 2nd, 2015, Zorro, San Francisco. Reminder, Leighton to the island today, 11:18 a.m., depart Zorro, 12:18 p.m., arrive San Jose. There's a lot of correspondence regarding the ranch, too, in the Epstein files. In fact, it appears the ranch is mentioned over 4,000 times. A lot of the correspondence between 2012 and 2018, you have the ranch as the sender or receiver in emails. There's even an email signature that says Zorro Management LLC. So with all that in mind, what would it take for there to be an excavation of potential bodies on this property? And if bodies are found, what would it show? That's what I want to talk about. Okay, so I want to bring on Richland County Coroner, Dr. Nada Rutherford. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's good to see you. Okay, this is a big allegation. We don't know if this is true. Obviously, we're talking about the fact that now an investigation is being launched into this property. You know, it's about sexual abuse allegations, but who knows what else they might be able to find during the course of this if they have residents and you know, survivors speak out about what they saw. What would it take for authorities to actually go around the property and try to excavate to find bodies? Let's start right there.
First of all, you have New Mexico. The terrain there is going to be extremely difficult. It's dry, it's rugged terrain, it's rough. So any excavation that's going to happen, they're going to need to have some idea about where this could possibly take place on this property, unless they're going to dig up the entire property, which is not very prudent of them. So they would need some sort of ground penetrating devices that could help to look and see if there's some sort of grave there, if they put this person in a box, if they if they buried them with something special that's not supposed to be in the ground naturally. So they're going to need a lot of technology first before they just go digging around this property.
And it's a big property. It's a big property. And this allegation is not even clear about when these people were allegedly buried there, which makes me wonder, even if you were digging, what could you potentially find? What would be left over?
You're going to have skeletal remains at this point. These allegations purport that this happened so long ago. And so not only did they say that these are possibly minors, so you have smaller bodies that are potentially buried. You have scavengers that are in this area, again, animals that are indigenous to this area that are, again, it is very hard to dig a grave unless you have special equipment. So, and especially on that type of terrain. So did they have special equipment? We know that, supposedly these people have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources. So if they tapped into those resources, they could have done this properly. But again, that's why the technology piece of this is going to be so important, to be able to see where they could have possibly buried someone. And then the amount of time that has passed, it's going to be grown over. You're not going to be able to see, freshly disturbed ground as you would for someone who has maybe been recently buried. And so again, this is going to take a long time. And those excavation efforts are probably just going to reveal skeletal remains, which then you're going to have to extract DNA from possibly the femur bones. And then who are these supposed minors that were there? Do their families know that they're missing? Where were they trafficked from? So not only are you trying to pinpoint country of origin, possibly, since they said that these minors were possibly from foreign countries, now you're going to have to try to track down family utilizing DNA. Skeletal remains, again, you look at the femur bone, you're trying to gather the DNA from there, but what else could you do? Dental records and things, but you must know the identity of the person in order to be able to do that.
Can you elaborate on that? So even if they find remains, you're saying it could be very, very difficult to establish A, identity, but B, cause and manner of death?
Absolutely. Unless they did something that affected the skeleton of the person, soft tissue injuries are not going to be readily apparent in someone who has been buried, especially if they've been buried for a really long time. That soft tissue eventually becomes desiccated and goes away. It goes back to the earth. And so you're not going to see much. So unless they were blunt force trauma, stabbed, shot, something like that, you may not see those things. You could see broken bones potentially, but again, how well preserved is the skeleton? And that's going to be very important. How quickly were these persons supposedly buried? Again, lots of allegations, lots of speculation, but if you are searching for bones, then you're going to need technology to look over all of that terrain.
So in other words, if we take these allegations as true that you had these girls die as a result of strangulation, it may be very difficult to actually see that.
Yes, it will. And again, how well was the body preserved before burial? Meaning the hyoid bone, which is located here in the neck, it's a protected bone, but usually that's what we see broken in someone who has died from strangulation. And so you'll see that piece again of the hyoid bone broken off, but you also see soft tissue injury. So if the body is not well preserved, then you're not going to see those things. And again, after all this time, all of that soft tissue is going to be gone. So in a regular autopsy where we suspect strangulation, you're going to see petechial hemorrhaging. You're going to see bleeding within the strap muscles of the neck. You're going to see that damage that happens from someone being strangled. But in skeletons, you don't see those things, again, unless there is severe blunt force injury to that area. And again, small, tiny bones. You have insects and things that are going to feed on the body when it's buried. And so, again, you may lose a lot of that evidence.
A couple of questions about that, and I apologize if you're repeating yourself. I just want to clarify. Is there any way to determine the age, whether it's from an anthropologist coming in or looking at the, like you said, maybe dental records if it's possible, or the bones? Is there any way to determine age?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where a forensic anthropologist is going to be really important. We have two that work in our office, PhDs, who teach me so much on a daily basis about just how they make these determinations. So femur length is going to be important. They're going to measure those bones. They're going to make sure that any part of that skeletal remain that they find, that they try to put that body together as anatomically correct as possible. And then they'll start getting their information from there. So again, the measurements of those bones, not only just the femur length, but also head circumference and those different things, basing those anthropology measurements, those are going to be very important in terms of assessing them and comparing them to what someone's age could be for the measurements that they find. So again, I always refer to forensic anthropologists on that, and they're going to need quite a few if they do get to a point where they're going to do excavation, because you don't want to lose any evidence. You can't just dig it up. It has to be done very carefully, methodically, and it's a very time-intensive process.
And can you just elaborate a little bit more on the dental records, what may or may not be available there?
So whenever we look at dental records, we look at the shape of the jaw. We look for any fillings, any cavities, any bridge work, anything that may be present, braces. For example, they come from someplace. So again, they're useless if we don't know a potential identity of the person, because we would have to be able to go to that dental office and subpoena those records and say, hey, could you please give us the dental records for this person so that we can compare what we have found with these skeletal remains. Again, I think TV sometimes tricks us into thinking that we can just use dental records and all of a sudden we can find out everything we need to know about a person. But you have to have a possible identity for someone before you just go digging through dental records.
Well, let's say there's a crown or a filling or braces. There's no way to extract DNA from that?
Sometimes there is, but you have the femur bone, which is going to give you a lot more information. So any of the bones, you can get DNA from them, but that femur bone is going to have the best, and that's usually what we utilize. They cut a little window into the bone, and that's usually what's utilized for DNA and those purposes. So again, that larger bone is going to have more information.
What happens, again, we're speculating here, but assuming there are bodies here for a moment, if they're buried with items, you know, I'm not saying that there would be ID, but if they're buried wearing clothing, would any of the clothing or materials that were buried with them, would that remain at that point? What have you seen in your experience? I'm not, because obviously if you're dealing with somebody who's nude, right, that's kind of what we're talking about. But if they were buried with articles of clothing or items, talk to me about the ability of that to be preserved and the ability to extract DNA or other forensic material from it.
No, there's definitely the possibility of extracting DNA and other items. You have to think hairs. People often don't think about your hair sheds. Other fibers get transferred during burial process. Most people are not experienced criminals. And that's what people fail to realize. Most people have not committed these types of crimes before. And so they make a lot of mistakes in the process. Again, what kind of resources they had access to, I don't know. And again, I don't know anything about this case. I'm simply commenting on the possibility that bodies are on this land. And so for me, for my office, when we've had skeletal remains partially buried or buried for a long time, and we've done the ground penetrating radar and found what we needed to find, we removed those skeletal remains very carefully. So even the area, the dirt around the body, we're going to preserve a lot of that as well and take samples from it, because it can sometimes give you great information. So there is the possibility that very valuable information can be obtained from what was buried with that person. And usually what we see in our line of work is when people bury someone, they bury their stuff with them. So the DNA from their things, if they put something in someone's mouth, it could possibly have saliva on it, which again has DNA. Hair, just because the skeletal remains are there, it doesn't mean that the hair goes away. Sometimes we find skeletons that still have hair attached. So again, these are things that could be very helpful in determining the identity of this person, but it could also give us pertinent information about who may have buried this person. Like you said, like hair of someone else. So just to be clear, hair can stay for quite some time, even if buried underground? Yes, it can. I mean, we've seen this with excavations from around the world and looking at people from the supposed Neanderthal, era. They have found hair. And so, again, that gives you a lot of information. And hair retains things. It retains things like drugs. It retains nutritional information sometimes. So, again, anything that's with that body, they're going to want to excavate this in the most careful way possible. I cannot stress this enough that they cannot just go in there just digging and doing it very roughly. It needs to be layer by layer by layer, and it is a very time intensive process. Shout out to all of the forensic anthropologists out there, because their work, especially on a case like this, is going to be so vital.
What would it take for an excavation to be ordered in something like this? In your experience, when you've seen cases, I mean, there's one thing to have this right now uncorroborated account, but obviously they're taking it seriously. They're trying to look into it and see what they can find. In your experience, what would it take for them to go around the property, to excavate, to use ground penetrating devices to try to find a body? What would it take?
Well, usually it takes that someone is missing and they have a possible location for this missing person. I know here in Richland County, we receive calls all the time. Hey, we need help. We have a tip that this missing person may be in this well, or they may be in this part of this 40-acre piece of land. And we will work with other agencies to utilize their technology to see if this is a possibility that someone is there. And then we have cases like the case of Adriana Laster, who they were just digging in the landfill and bones were found. So again, were bones found? Is there some sort of suspicion that there are missing persons on this property? So usually it just takes someone leaving a tip or giving information that could be related to a missing person for them to go and start digging. But again, they are going to need technology to even begin looking through all of this land, because there's just so much of it. How do you find which section? Are they going to go section by section and do a grid kind of dig? I don't know, but it's going to take a lot of logistics.
And how long would that take if they went section by section using ground penetrating devices? I mean, how quickly can you get a hit?
Weeks, months. For an area that is known to possibly have a buried person, that can take a couple of hours. But for the amount of land that these researchers and that these investigators are looking at, this could take weeks in order to pinpoint an area. So they may have to have multiple devices out there trying to find what is possibly a grave.
Dr. Nada Rutherford, this is a fascinating discussion. We are obviously in the early preliminary stages of this, but I wanted to have you on just to give us something to think about as we're trying to understand this allegation. And now that there's an investigation into this property, how can I not talk about it? But again, really interesting things to think about. So we'll see what happens. But doctor, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. We're also up on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody. Don't wait. Click the link in the description and start browsing safely with CyberGhost VPN. Stay private, stay secure, unlock global content. Get CyberGhost VPN now with 84% off plus 4 months free, risk-free with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description and start protecting your digital life today.
All right, guys, thank you very much for coming today. I have called you for a very special thing. We have an event day after tomorrow, and Khushi, you will make the necessary arrangements. Khushi.
Yeah, sure, sir.
You seem a bit off today.
Everything is good, sir. Don't worry, I will do.
All right, I am counting on you. All the very best.
ਕੱਲ ਰਾਤੀ ਰੋਈਆਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਰੋਇਆ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਚ ਲੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਚ ਅੜੇ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਖਰੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਦਿਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ तेरा नाम बुलाते आवे ना 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 ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੱਚ ਸੱਚ ਦੱਸੀ ਵੇ ਇੱਕ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਗੱਲ ਵੇ ਤੂੰ ਦਿਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖੀ ਵੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਵੇ ਤੇਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਵੇ ਸੁਣ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੁਣ ਲੈ ਯਾਰ ਵੇ ਹੁਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਲੜਦਾ ਏ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਸੜਦਾ ਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਹੋਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਲਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾ ਤੇ ਆਵੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੇਰੀ ਦੂਰੀ ਤੇ ਮਜਬੂਰੀ ਦਿਲ ਮੇਰਾ ਏ ਸਹਿੰਦਾ ਏ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਨਾ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਮਨਾਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਰੁੱਸਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਸਿਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਤੂੰ ਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾ ਤੇ ਆਵੇ
हे गाइस, तो अभी आपने हमारा दुनिया सॉन्ग देखा, सो प्लीज कमेंट करके बताना कि आपको सॉन्ग कैसा लगा।
एंड हाँ, वीडियो को लाइक करना, जाने से पहले रिपल म्यूजिक स्टूडियोज के चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लेना। थैंक यू, बाय बाय एवरीवन।